How we doing, everybody? Welcome to the show. My name is Bo.
I'm Jamie, and this is
Adjusting to Life, a chiropractic married couple's take on life, love, business, parenting, all the ups and downs, mess ups, screw ups, funny, sad, happy moments, everything in between.
Yep. Well, babe, what do you think about boundaries?
Boundaries. I think, sorry, my eyes are going to calm down. Something was
I just made
Something
you
was in there.
emotional today. It's okay.
That's fair. Boundaries. Yeah. So we were talking about boundaries, and I think we went into like, okay, boundary here, boundary there, boundary here, and then we were, it's more of a, well, what are you creating a boundary around? Like, you wouldn't build a massive protective fence around something if you didn't even know what was in there, or you didn't value what was in there. And so I think going into today, first identifying what it is that's important enough to create a boundary for, and then going out of that priority state of mind and looking at areas where you do need maybe be a little bit more protection or a little bit more thought and intention into what you're doing, how you're living.
Yeah, and I think starting with, just like you said, you have to kind of define what it is that, a boundary. Lisa Turker, she's a Christian author, and she wrote a really great book called Good Boundaries and Goodbyes. And she kind of talks in there about like a boundary isn't something that's supposed to necessarily like keep someone out. Like it doesn't have to be looked at as like this wall. Like we're not building Trump's wall, right? We're looking at how can...
Getting political.
Well, sorry, rewind. Think what you want to think on that.
You didn't say you wanted it, you just compared it.
Right, true. But think of... the boundary is meant to strengthen a relationship or strengthen something that you have. And so how can a boundary be used to benefit both sides? And sometimes it might not always seem like it's benefiting both sides if the other side of the boundary doesn't want to receive it that way. But defining that of like, okay, well, what is it that we have that we really value either in our family or our life, and how can we protect that, but also kind of be adaptable and know where we're stopping.
Yeah, and I think my brain goes to maybe because this whole Instagram thing about like, how often do you think about the Roman Empire? Have you seen that?
No.
So girlfriends and wives are filming their boyfriends and husbands and saying, how often do you think about the Roman Empire? And it's like weekly or daily or every other day. And I guess I'm in the outlier group because the only time I thought about that is seeing that video. Literally never. But now, in this moment, I am. So I guess now it's going to change.
It's working.
But you think about like a city or a castle or a property in like way long ago that would have a big wall and gates and lookout towers. And it's not that no one can go in and out, like you said. It's that if you would like to come in here, you need to respect the way that we come in and out. This is when we do it. This is how we do it. We'd like to see who you are, whatever that process is. It's not that it's a no, it's that if you're being violated in the process in which you've established that protects that priority, let's say that family group or whatever that thing is for you, purpose in life, when that starts being infiltrated from other areas that you no longer can manage, I think that's when the boundary alarm goes off. That's when maybe you do bring the bridge up for a little while and reestablish before you open back up. And like you're saying, it's open and it's closed, but it's never quite the same open and the same closed all the time.
Yeah, I think there's a healthy ebb and flow, right? Just because you have a structure at some time in some season doesn't mean it's going to stick that way forever. So checking your own values consistently to make sure that you're still honoring a boundary that is healthy in each different circumstance or season.
Yeah, and I think like real life situations where it's hard to have these. It's easy to have this conversation here. It's difficult to have it with the people that you're needing to have it with.
Right.
And so I think like in our circumstances, we've had instances now over our 14-year relationship, 12-year marriage of different levels of like boundary setting with parents and siblings. And we were young when we got married, so I think there was a little bit of that like, you're still my little kid and I need to make sure you're doing it the right way. And I've never been one to do things probably the conventional way, at least what my parents would have thought would have been the linear path. No, it's kind of true. If I get an idea, it's going to go down that way until I crash and burn, and then I'll just figure it out. But anyway, having those conversations along the way of like, hey, not that this is just bothering me, but this is why this is an issue for me, and it's coming from a place not of like you hurt me or I want my way. It's coming from a place of here's my priority, and here's how it's not being supported, and I'm having this conversation with you because I value my relationship with you so much
Right.
that I don't want to let it burn.
Right.
Right? I don't want that bridge to go away forever. I just need it to be traveled on a little differently. And sometimes the other people choose to burn their end of it. And it's your choice then to allow them to reconnect if you want that in the future. But if you can take that place of a stance of love in that statement, not of self-motivation, even though it is a boundary for your priority, you're still valuing that relationship with who you're setting it with. And the reason for the boundary is to prolong both parts of that scenario.
Right.
And I think we've dealt with great reception from family, and I think we've dealt with people who still don't really want to talk to me in some matters, you know. And I've handled all of them like perfect.
With a lot of grace and just understanding in all areas.
Can I also just say that if any of my friends and family are watching, that's where they just turned it off. They're like, he's full of it. We done. He out.
Liar.
But that's the thing. It feels selfish because you're telling someone you need to change, and it's like it feels like it's for me, but it's really for the prolonging of your main priority and the priority of that relationship with that person.
Well, and I think those words too are super important because when you're the one that's like establishing something new, like a boundary, and you feel healthy about it, and you know your values and your morals and why you're choosing that, making sure that that other side sees that heart and they're not thinking of like, okay, you need to change what you're doing because it's impacting me. It's like, I see this is a struggle for however this dynamic is working. So I really want to value that and make this relationship or this bond or whatever it is stronger. So if we want it to flourish, I need it to kind of keep going a little bit more this way. Or can you work with that? Compromising into that too. It's knowing your boundaries and sticking to them, but knowing that there's another human on the other side of that too that has their own experience.
Yeah, and I think the other end of this too is not to assume that you have all the correct assumptions, informations, and opinions going into a boundary setting episode where are you humble enough to receive something from someone you care about and love enough to have this conversation. You value their opinion, obviously. Are you humble enough to receive if you're being unreasonable, if you're maybe not acting quite as loving as you think? And sure, they could be wrong, but chances are you're not all right. And so just because you're going in with this intention and it's going to go this way, if you do value them in that boundary, can you build it together?
Right.
Right? And can you give a little bit of what you thought you were going to get to ultimately, again, ultimate goal, prolong both relationships in the best way possible so they keep growing. I think we've had probably the most difficult time in friend episodes with that. And a lot of that goes to like making mistakes about how to handle situations on our end, right? And so the other end of that too is I think, especially when we first moved here, like you want to do everything and it's a new phase of life and things seem fun and new, and it's so easy to not do the dishes, and then not doing the dishes because you want to go somewhere. Not doing that turns into not doing the thing you said you do with your kid, and then it turns into not cutting the grass, and then it looks bad, and then you got more time, and things just pile up so quick when you're trying to serve that fun part of your life and that relationship only, that I think even with friends in new situations, when you move to a new city, it's like it's easy to forget why you moved there in the first place. And then how do you backtrack from setting so many unclear boundaries, or at least false ones that you didn't want to set? How do you rebuild those backwards a little bit?
Yeah.
And that can be really hard too.
Yeah.
Specifically, I think a boundary we created was in December when we were deciding to stop drinking for a while. And we went 7 months. We've had a couple times here and there where we've had a couple drinks. And to be honest, I feel like the few times I've done it since July is like, I don't know that was as good as I thought it was, which we'll see how it goes. But just that change in that first half of the year, it really changed like how we spent our time. And not always, it was like 50-50 where we didn't reach out as much to people because we knew it was just not centered around alcohol, but that's why I used to go there, is to have a few beers with friends and to do whatever else was going on. So it really changed how we spent our time. We didn't see a lot of people. All of a sudden it's 3 months and we're like, man, we haven't really done anything. And so for us, we created this boundary that was so strong that we didn't fill it with good. We just eliminated one thing that we wanted to, but we never really intentionally put good into it.
Right. We knew where our hard line was, but we didn't work on building that with anybody else. Like, we were really good at building it together. I mean, I think that, at least in our personal experience going through it, I don't really know how you could have one spouse that does drink a lot and one that doesn't, but I think that's just, maybe our dynamic too. But
Are you the spouse that drinks a lot, or was I the spouse that drinks a lot?
I don't know that answer. It's 50-50.
I mean, if we're going, is it like frequency or by volume? Because I'm like
By
twice your
volume,
size, so that's not
win.
fair.
Yeah.
Like, it's got to be a relative amount.
Either way,
I feel like this is a whole different episode.
we're derailing here.
We'll just put a pin in
We'll
that
put
one.
a pin in that one. That's a good episode. We'll come back
Yeah.
to that one. But we did a
Just
really
leave it
good
there.
job of, like, feeling strong with and feeling confident and, like, super happy with what we chose. Like, I wasn't mad about waking up on a Saturday morning and being like, "Woo, let's go at 6:30." Well, 6:30, 7:30 maybe still, but
So,
I like to sleep. That's fine.
8 o'clock.
That was bad.
Yeah, but the point that I was getting at too is, like, all that was good and we felt so great. But if someone was like, okay, well, like, why, other than that, than feeling better, like, what are you doing with all that extra time?
Yeah.
Or all that extra feel good? What have you done with it? And I was like, I don't know. Just kind of the same old stuff, I guess. So I think taking that change, but not just being like, oh, here's our trophy. We did something.
Right.
Okay, well, what are you going to do with it?
Right.
Right? Like, you won the Super Bowl, but, like, if you never do anything again, you never win another one, you're going to be forgotten in 2 years, maybe less. So I think that was a big step too, was like taking the initiative to then start making some functional change in our family too, for the better, which I think was a big step in our homeschool choice. Our old social calendar would not have even permitted us the thought of thinking that was possible. And I think that would have been because we were valuing that social calendar too much over priorities. So our boundaries were all zigzaggy and gappy.
Very zigzaggy.
Kind of like a house of mirrors. Like, it's tough to get through, but eventually you'll get there.
You'll find your way. You bounce enough into things.
Now it's like Trump's wall, apparently. Anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think it's been good. And I think the thing about boundaries is they can change, they can modify. Don't build them so rigid that they're stuck, but build them tight enough that they protect what you're going to protect.
And find, just because you lose or you take away something doesn't mean you necessarily have to add something else to replace it, right? But knowing that, like, okay, if I'm going to make a shift in whatever it is, and your actions, your relationship, whatever it is, like, what does that then newness look like? And what do you, I think it's so easy to, like, for our example of drinking, like, take away drinking, and now I know, okay, that piece is gone, and that's not a hindrance on anything. But then, like you said, like, okay, well, now what do we do with that? And how do we not just have this new line, but now we're having that kind of open, like that whole one door closes, another door opens. You're kind of just trying to morph and change with how that new season is going, and not just eliminating having that line and being done and separate.
I like it.
It's good.
All right, guys, if you made it this far, thank you for listening to the show. We really appreciate you. We've got more content and topics coming up. If you have something you'd like to hear about, please let us know, because we'd like to share info on what you actually want to hear.
And if you can like, comment, and subscribe, that would help us out, and share it with other people who you think would love it too.
Have a good day. Remember, progress, not perfection.
There you go.